Hey, what's going on, everybody? Happy Friday. Welcome to another edition here of Mean Streets at FTN Network. Chris Meaney here with you. A little slow moving here today. My apologies. We had a couple things pop up here in the household as we prepare for Hurricane Lee. Hopefully everybody on the East Coast stays safe this weekend. But we're live here right now on our FTN Network YouTube page. Appreciate you guys taking the time here to hang out with me. If you have any start or sit questions, leave them in the comment section. If you're listening on iTunes or Spotify, you can always reach out at Chris Meaney, Mean Streets FTN at gmail.com. Always circling back on these videos as well. So if you're hanging out, smash the like button. You're listening on iTunes and Spotify, we do appreciate the review, the subscribe, tell a buddy. We are here. Week 2 got underway last night. I want to start with a big apology about DeAndre Swift. I said on this show, I didn't really trust DeAndre Swift. A couple people reached out about starting DeAndre Swift. Jahmyr Gibbs versus Swift. I had that question a couple times, and I did lean with Jahmyr Gibbs. I couldn't have been more wrong about the backfield last night. I thought we would see a little bit more Rashad Penny. We did towards the end of the game yesterday, but just after Boston Scott left with a concussion and Swift was just on the sidelines after multiple carries. So my apologies there. I do want to start right away with that. I will get into Swift in just a little bit and some other things today on the show. We have some picks against the spread, some money line plays, some totals, and we will have a fun little parlay, a teaser. I got 10 touchdown props for you. I'm going to rank them. I don't want to come at you guys with too many props, but for people that like touchdown calls, that like bets, that like some action, you can use it for fantasy purposes, real life purposes. Love to hear your guys' favorite touchdown calls as well. The show is about you guys. We're a family here. So I'd like to know what you guys are thinking as well as we, as I mentioned, get into week 2 here. So some props, some picks against the spread, money line, parlay, some touchdown props. Going to dive into some DFS stuff as well. We're going to bring up the schedule, do some quick hits. Yesterday we talked start and sit. We really dove into a lot of those start and sit questions that you had. We showed off the FTN fantasy projections, the rankings and things like that. What I will say, if you're looking for a package over at FTNbets.com, FTN Daily, FTN Fantasy, we have a new optimizer over at FTN Daily. If you're looking to get into the DFS world, if you are just a straight season-long player, FTN Fantasy, we have you covered with rankings all year long, projections, rest of the season rankings already over at FTN Fantasy. We have Discord channels, waiver wire articles, start and sit. We have all kinds of content, tools, 40-plus tools. If you just want a betting package, all the picks across all sports from everybody over at FTNbets.com. NHL around the corner, NBA here soon as well. Discord channel, projections tools, it's all there included. DVOA statistics as well from our guy Aaron Schatz. And promo code DVOA, one more time, 20% off all packages. And that promo code will expire after Monday Night Football. We have 2 Monday Night Football games happening this weekend as well. Saints and Panthers, and the Brownies taking on the Steelers. So let's get into last night. Again, if you're hanging out here, I see some people hanging out, some questions, like just leave them there and we'll get to them. I do want a quick little couple takeaways from last night. 34-28 win for the Birds. We did have the Vikings to hang around, backdoor cover there. It was a very sloppy first half. Like, it was just awful. Minnesota again turning the ball over. Alexander Mattison just did not look good for the second straight game. We were worried on the show about Alexander Mattison, how efficient he would be. I was kind of pumping Ty Chandler's tires. I still haven't seen him. I tweeted a couple weeks ago, get to know Ty Chandler. And then last night, I think it's time to get to know Ty Chandler. And a couple people like, he didn't do anything. It's like, that's the point. He didn't do anything. I think he had 1 carry for 0 yards. He caught a pass or two. Didn't look great with the ball in his hands. You know, the offensive line is not great at the moment for Minnesota, right? Up to a backup center. They had, multiple players leave yesterday in the game on the offensive line as well. I know everybody wants to take shots at Kirk Cousins every single week. It's fun to take shots at Kirk Cousins. Prime time, another loss for Kirk Cousins. But man, he was great last night. In terms of that offensive line and playing in a hostile environment in Philly, tough place to play, home opener for the Eagles. 31 for 44, 364 yards and 4 passing touchdowns. It looked like the Vikings were completely out of the game early in the second half, and he found a way to get the team back into the game with a couple really nice drives late in that football game. But Madison, 8 for 28. A couple things went right in terms of props for us yesterday. Madison over 2.5 grabs. We did have over 13.5 receiving yards. I think he was stuck on 11. There was a play at the end of the game where he caught it, and then he fumbled. He would have had the first down, would have had the over the receiving yard prop. There was a penalty on the Eagles, and Minnesota probably would have declined that, but he fumbled at the very end. So we didn't get, they had to do a re-over on the play. And we just didn't get it. So that kind of burned us. There's a couple of people I saw reach out to me about that play. And you know what? Sometimes good, sometimes bad. George always says it. Sometimes luck is on your side. Sometimes it isn't. He had a couple bad drops. He had 6 targets in the game and only 3 catches. Maybe we'll have to shy away from Alexander Mattison moving forward, but I still think the process was right against the Eagles in the middle of the field. We talked about TJ Hawkinson. For him to score a plus 255 and for him to have over 4.5 grabs. Now, he only had 4 grabs in the heading into the final drive, but he finished with 8 targets, 7 catches, 66 yards, and 2 touchdowns. This is back-to-back weeks where the Eagles have struggled against tight ends. Hunter Henry in week 1, Hawkinson. But Hawkinson is our guy, right? We've been talking about him in the offseason. 6 catches per game last season in 10 matchups with the Vikings. Multiple double-digit target games and a couple double-digit catch games, more end zone targets than Adam Thielen when he stepped in, just as many as Justin Jefferson. And again, a couple end zone targets for him, found touchdowns. So what's that quick math? I think he had 8 or 9 catches in week 1, and here we are again with 7 grabs. So I wouldn't be shocked if now that, Travis Kelce, if he can't play this week again, sounds like he is going to suit up, that Hawkinson is just right there with Kelce in terms of catches. 6 catches per game last year. Travis Kelce led all tight ends with 6.4. So thumbs down, Madison. Stock up Hawkinson, I guess. If you weren't buying, we could view this guy as a top 3, top 4 tight end. He's my tight end 3. I'll always have him ranked that way. He was tight end 2 for me this week. Doesn't matter. You have him. You're playing him. Jordan Addison, back-to-back weeks where he had touchdowns. I don't know if I'll ever really jump into his catch prop, but his receiving yard prop is always in play. We had that one on the show yesterday at 39.5. And, he's just a guy that can win one-on-one matchups. I mean, I say just a guy. He looks really good, right? He's got some speed. He's always going to see one-on-one with Justin Jefferson and the attention that TJ Hawkinson's going to garner as well in the middle of the field. And Justin Jefferson was just fine. Again, another great game from him, 11 for 159. I think he had 13 targets, and Slay was on him pretty much the entire game. Justin Jefferson is a cheat code. This guy is just phenomenal. Tough play for him to, reach out, fumble the ball, over the pylon, touch back. I mean, it is a bad call, but, you got to hang on to the football, and I'm sure he'll learn for that. But like Kevin O'Connell said after the game, JJ wants to win. At that point of the game, it kind of was a turning point because they were going to score at the end of that first half and take the lead. And then, obviously they don't get that lead and Philly starts strong in the third quarter, but Justin Jefferson cheat code, right? All the time. We had somebody ask about him yesterday with Darius Slay on him. You just play him no matter what. He went first overall for a reason, if not first, probably second or third, at least in your drafts. So Addison is a guy we're going to continue, I think, to target some receiving yard props on him, maybe some busted coverage at times, and he's got that breakaway speed, and as I mentioned, a lot of one-on-one. On Philly's side of things, so I mentioned off the top, just completely wrong about DeAndre Swift. DeAndre Swift, 28 carries, $175, 6.3 yards per carry. He had 16 carries in the second half at 7 yards per pop. To put that into perspective, he only had more than 16 carries once in his first 41 NFL games. He a career high 33 carries in 2021. Needed a full 10 minutes of overtime to get to those 33 carries. I remember the game was against the Steelers, sloppy weather game, and Swift had a lot of run late in the game and into overtime. Detroit never used him this way. I've never really ever seen him used that way. He's always been a guy that's shifty with the ball in his hands, and I don't want to take anything away from his game yesterday, but the offensive line of Philadelphia, it's about time that they leaned on that run game. Again, they started off very slow. The first half may have been one of the worst first halves I've ever seen in the NFL. The play calling was atrocious. Again, new offensive coordinator Brian Johnson. It's going to take some time to kind of get going here. And, it took time with Nick Sirianni when the Eagles first got everybody together. Nick Sirianni, first-year head coach, Steve Steichen and Gannon, they were all young and in different roles. And they wanted to air it out a bunch. I know everybody wants Jalen Hurts and the Eagles to air out the ball, and with AJ and Devontae Smith, and we saw a little bit with that last night, especially Devontae. But the strength of the football team with the Eagles is to run the rock. It's old school football. Nobody likes it. Nobody's here to talk about how awesome it was. They lean on the run game. They run the rock. They've been the best rushing football team over the past couple years, and that's their identity, and they got back to that. The offensive line opened up a lot of holes last night for DeAndre Swift, but he had a lot of great runs. Again, we haven't seen this. I think he had 16 carries, more than, or at least 16 carries, I think, twice in his NFL career. I mentioned the 33, 28 yesterday, the 16 in the second half, the patience that he showed, with the holes, a couple, he could have easily had 3 rushing touchdowns yesterday. Of course, that tush push, the cheat code there with like the rugby scrum. I'm sure they'll get rid of that next year because it is the biggest lock in sports. And Jalen Hurts had the 2 rushing touchdowns there yesterday. Minnesota calls the timeout just before Philadelphia was going to do it, and Philly runs the same play. It's like you can't stop it. It really is unstoppable. But Swift, great game. Really good game. He had 3 catches for 6 yards as well. Penny hardly touched the field, as I mentioned. He did have a catch for, I think, a couple yards, and he had 3 carries there for 9 yards. So good, great game for Swift. What I will say now is it is an opportunity to sell high. I just make them available. I believe, like, with that game, he definitely deserves to be the lead. Philly boy, first game, homecoming, like that was all really good to see. If Kenneth Gainwell is healthy, is it just, a timeshare between the two? One thing we can say with confidence is Penny is definitely taking a back seat. He'll be inactive again, probably, with Kenneth Gainwell is active. So you wait this out and see the injury for Kenneth Gainwell. I don't really like to drop backs. I like to have running back depth, but honestly, I don't think you can be really holding him unless you're in a 16-team league. If anything does happen to Swift, never had a full season, neither has Penny. Gainwell hurt. Boston Scott left with the concussion. At least he's under protocol. Things could happen where other guys step up, but what I want to say is make him available, because I saw this from Andy Behrens of Yahoo this morning on Twitter, and I'm trying to have Andy back on the show. He's been on a couple times, one of my favorites in the industry. He showed me a couple trades that happened in Yahoo. Swift for Travis Kelce, straight up. Swift for Jalen Waddle, straight up. Swift and Elijah Moore for Waddle and David Montgomery. I like those other sides. I would rather have Kelce. I would rather have Waddle. I would rather have Waddle and Montgomery. Swift for Pittman and Mooney for Zeke, Chubb, and Pickens. That one's kind of more even, but at the end of the day, the best player in that trade is Nick Chubb. Don't really care for Zeke. Don't care for Darnell Mooney. I'd be selling high on him. And Pickens, doesn't sound like that Deontay Johnson injury is as bad as I thought. I heard 4 weeks. Maybe it's not 4 weeks day to day. He's not going to suit up this week. But Pickens is the guy that I've always wanted in Pittsburgh, but it is a run first offense. Pittman had the big game. So just make these guys available. It's like the stock market. You don't have to sell him if you don't want to. You like to see that game, but at the same time, nobody ever wants to sell a player off of that big game. There are going to be some highs and some lows, but that was a real nice performance from DeAndre Swift. Very, very impressive. And at the end of the day, the Eagles do have the best offensive line in football, and they have a pretty soft schedule to start as well. I believe that the Bucs next week. The Jets will be a tough matchup defensively, but they will run the football. I think they have Washington coming up as well. I don't know if they have like a true test until week 7 against Miami, but things will get tougher for the Eagles. I believe they go Dallas bye, out of the bye, KC, Buffalo, San Fran, Dallas, and then into Seattle. So things will get tougher. This team has not looked good offensively for the first 2 weeks of the season, but they're 2-0. Offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, that are new here in town. So it may take a little bit of time. My expectations are certainly high in Philadelphia because everybody's talking about how awful they've looked, but yet here they are at 2-0. Other takeaways here for me. Devontae Smith, he does lead this team. If you go back to week 2 of last year, now to week 2 of this year, Devontae Smith has as many targets as AJ Brown and about 20 more catches than him. So I know AJ had a little bit of a freak out on the sidelines. Let's not look into that too much. Honestly, wide receivers want the football. They're competitive. AJ has always been like that. The team is up. You'd like to see everybody happy if the team is up a couple scores. It was a Devontae Smith game. It's been Devontae Smith, in the first couple of weeks of the season. They're going to be fine, right? It's competitive sports. You guys, those that have played sports, There's times when, I was playing hockey and my team won like 6-0 and I had 0 points. And yeah, I was bummed. I was bumming myself. Like, I'm not mad that the team is like doing things. I'm freaking out on the bench, but this is a competitive nature that people have. So I don't look into that too much. If you could buy AJ Brown in fantasy, I would go and do that. And I would not sell Devontae Smith because he was a top 10 wide receiver last year. And we had him that way this year, maybe 11 or 12 in our rankings, but in that third tier. And, he's a stud. Goddard got his catches, his big 0 in week 1. He had 7 targets, 6 grabs, but only 22 receiving yards. So not a lot of other takeaways besides, Alexander Madison. I don't know if we have to start this guy moving forward. You're not dropping him. Maybe we see more Ty Chandler in our life here moving forward, but the offensive line is depleted at the moment. This is a pass-happy offense. Kind of had worries about Madison heading into the season, how efficient he would be. So if you want to move on from him, you got to wait until there's a better game from him. And then maybe you just can't sell him now. You're not going to get anything for him. Nobody wants Alexander Madison. If you're in an 8-team league, a 10-team league, I could see moving on from Alexander Madison. If Joshua Kelly is hanging around on the waiver wire, I could do something like that. It sounds like Austin Eckler will miss this game with a high ankle sprain. Other injuries we're monitoring here, Mark Andrews, Darren Waller, Travis Kelce. As I mentioned, Deontay Johnson looks like he is going to be out of this game. No practice again today for DeAndre Hopkins. So Hopkins doesn't look like he's going to play. Treylon Burks maybe hanging around. We'll get into that game. I want to show some lines and kind of do some quick hits on some of these games coming up as well. So let's get into it here in a second. Actually, we'll if I see some people hanging out, if there's any questions, we'll get going here. I know there's got to be some Swift stuff here because I do feel pretty bad about yesterday. Right away, too, like the way Swift was running the rock, I'm like, uh-oh. I definitely told a couple people maybe to sit DeAndre Swift yesterday, and that's my bad. I don't have any shares of him. I have him in one dynasty league, and I didn't play him last night. I wish I did. Hi, Chris. Hope everything is fine. Everything is all good. It's just going to be some bad weather here on the East Coast, and hopefully we're okay here. We have the Sirius show tomorrow, 9 a.m. Eastern, 9 to 11, channel 87 on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio, the FTN Fantasy Show, myself, Jake Sealy, and Lauren Carpenter. I'm hoping I can join them, and I have power for those guys as well. Stay safe. Hopefully everybody on the East Coast. Man, it's been a rocky, just this summer in Nova Scotia between floods and fires and now the hurricane. Are you satisfied with the Philly performance? So, I mean, offensively, not really. I'd like them getting to the ground game. Like I would love to see Hurts toss it up to AJ and Devontae all game long, all season long. But that's what they do best. They lean on that offensive line, which I thought played pretty bad in the first 6 quarters of the season in terms of pressure. Like, they were kind of getting beat. Jalen Hurts didn't have a lot of time. There's, some of the play calling, 3rd and 5 and, a design or not even a design run. It's like a read option. Then Hurts is making the wrong read. So there's clearly some rust there. And I see some hesitancy in Hurts's game, but they got back to what they do best is lean on the ground game, run the rock. They had a drive yesterday, which Al Michaels talked about. I think it was like 15 carries for 55 rushing yards and 9 minutes came off the clock. It's just like there was a couple penalties and it was just like really weird football yesterday. But I was really impressed with DeAndre Swift, man. And again, the offensive line that was the best performance from a running back on the ground since like Shady McCoy. So, I mean, and Miles Sanders had some great games last year and had some great games in Philly as well. Credit to the offensive line. I don't want to take anything away from Swift. He was certainly the player of the game on offense, but defensively, I have some issues. Maddox is now gone for the season. They've been, losing some players over the first couple weeks of the season. They got some extra time here, Monday Night Football, maybe to get right, but we'll see what happens here. What up? Welcome in. Jurius Lloyd in the house. Addison had me so scared for 3 quarters with the receiving yard prop or the fantasy. We ended up getting it, right? The over 39.5. And again, I think that's just to repeat myself here. I think that's something we need to look at every single week. If everybody out there is into props and betting, is maybe shy away from the catch prop, because I think at best he'll just be a third option, which there's nothing wrong with that, but it's JJ and Hawkinson. But Addison has that breakaway speed, has the ability to burn, one-on-one. He's going to see a lot of one-on-one. But yeah, I was really sweating that one out, and I was definitely sweating out Hawkinson because it was a 2-unit play for me on Monday, and I really pushed that yesterday. And I just want, I don't care about my fantasies. I do, but I don't take this the wrong way. I care more about you guys and just kind of steering you in the right direction. Hopefully, providing one a distraction from the crazy world that we're all living in. Two, like this is sports. Let's have some fun. Three, try to earn you guys give you guys a little bit of cash right in your pockets if I can. That's great. Love the conversations we always have. Everybody is super sharp in here. I see some, familiar faces, friendly faces. I love it. And I don't want to give you guys bad advice. And selfishly, I want you guys to hang out and, rate, review, subscribe, smash the like button. I want you guys to watch the show and things like that. So I was definitely sweating that out. And I'll be honest, it's Swift running, between all the holes and the jukes and the touchdown. It was great to see, but at the same time, it did bother me a little bit because we talked about maybe sitting him and trying to have a safer play. That O-line was panicking, D-line and every other play. Minnesota again with the turnovers, right? Just turnovers. They could have easily won that game. The punt return, they were set up in a good spot and they fumbled that. Madison fumbled and the whole Justin Jefferson through the end zone touchback. It was tough, man. That was really tough to see if you're a Vikings fan. They always seem to find ways to lose football games. Meaney, boys, good afternoon. Packer 1-0. They are Bruce East 91. And sat Swift in 3 leagues. I'd take full responsibility for that, right? I feel like that is I definitely feel like that is on me. A daily handle. Good afternoon means everyone. Happy Friday to you, good sir, as well. I'm the person I'm going against, Zach Cousins, but got Mahomes anyways. Yeah, I have Cousins in one league. It's a guillotine league, super flex. My team is not that great. It was a tough draft. It was 17 teams in it. But I do have Cousins as my second quarterback with Hawkinson, so it should be enough. You just have to not come last in a guillotine league so you can move on to the next week. Who should I start? Aaron Jones and James Cook. Let's go down this road again. I just repeat myself again. I don't want to steer you guys in the wrong direction here. I have Aaron Jones ranked ahead of James Cook. It does sound like Aaron Jones is going to play. I think both guys are really good starts this week. I liked what I saw, the usage for James Cook last week, getting some carries, getting some touches. Didn't see a whole lot of Damian Harris. Didn't see a whole lot of Tavius Murray. Bills are at home, 9-point favorites. The one thing about this Falcons and Packers game is, man, it's going to be over quick. I do believe both teams want to run the rock and say that with confidence about Atlanta. That game was over early with Carolina. I'll show you my rankings here. I don't think we have the projections that deep. Actually, we may. The projections are on point. I would roll with them honestly over my rankings, but I would tell you that our projections and our rankings consensus will have Aaron Jones ahead, but I want to give you guys some confirmation here. So that's the top 12. I think we did dive a little bit deeper here with Aaron Jones. This is a half point setting at 12.5 and James Cook at 12. So not a big difference there between the two. For me, I like I said, I have Aaron Jones ranked ahead of him, and Jeff Ratcliffe also has Aaron Jones. Oh no, he has yes, he does. He has Aaron Jones just a couple spots ahead there, James Cook. I think these guys are both really good plays. We obviously want to give you the best possible one. And after Aaron Jones had that week that he had in week one, it's really hard to move away from him in that spot. So that is how I lean. But I think you're in a really good situation there between the two. Isaiah Rodriguez. Who would you trust Christian Watson if he starts? I just don't. Doesn't sound like he's going to play. Doesn't sound like he's going to start. And it's a really risky start, Christian Watson there. So I would lean with Lockett to replace him. I am worried about Seattle, missing both tackles here and Geno not looking good. Yeah, Hutchinson's going to really have a day. So I'd worry about that one. We'll get into some other start and sit questions here in a second. I wanted to rapid fire through some thoughts here, and maybe this will help you guys a little bit with some start and sit questions. And again, I'll reference the rankings and the projections. So if you have a question there, leave it. We'll get into it. Got some picks and props and things like that to come. So let's start here with the top left, with the Packers and with the Falcons. I wouldn't be starting Drake London. I would assume that they're going to try to get him some looks, even though Arthur Smith wants to run the football, right? We know that. They want to run the football in Atlanta. You're starting Bijan Robinson. You hope that he gets a couple more red zone looks. I think Tyler Algier is worthy of a flex play as well. considering the work that he had in the red zone last week. I don't think he's going to have 2 rushing touchdowns every single week, but he may get some run. Drake London is on Jair Alexander. According to our wide receiver cornerback matchup tool, I mean, that is one of the worst matchups possible. This is probably my favorite tool. I should show this off a little bit more on this show with maybe some screen grabs and dive into things like that. But Drake London up against Jair Alexander, it is not a matchup that is going to favor him. And I just can't trust him. Even Kyle Pitts. I don't have any Kyle Pitts. I may be looking to start other guys like Higbee or maybe even Hayden Hurst. I feel a little bit better about Kyle Pitts than I do about Drake London. Aaron Jones, sure. A.J. Dillon didn't do a whole lot last week, so I'm a little hesitant to roll him out. If Christian Watson does play, that question that, had earlier, I just don't think he's going to play. But if he does play, I'd probably have him as a wide receiver 3 into the 30s. There's definitely some risk there because he hasn't been practicing for 2 weeks. And, he may be limited. He may pull something. I think you guys, if those who have him, I don't think he's going to suit up and that decision will be made for you. Romeo Doubs, I like. If for whatever reason, no Watson or no Romeo Doubs, think about Luke Musgrave over Kyle Pitts, believe it or not. Think about maybe Jaden Reed, in deeper formats, potentially, if those two were out in Doubs and Christian Watson. The Raiders and the Bills here. The Raiders looking to have a 2-0 start. They haven't started 2-0 with their first 2 games on the road since like the 80s. Jacoby Myers is out. Does sound like we're going to see Devontae Adams play, dealing with a foot injury. It does sound like he's going to play. Hunter Henry had a big donut last week. I'm not saying to start Hunter Henry, but we should see him get a couple targets with Jacoby Myers here sideline. The Bills are massive favorites, 8.5, 9 in some spots. I expect a bounce back performance here from Mr. Josh Allen. Stephon Diggs was great. We'll get to him in a little bit. I think Gabe Davis is like a sneaky touchdown call. I view him as like a flex guy. I think he'll get a little bit more run this week than he did last week, but Bills should be fine. I'm not crazy about the spread. To be honest, it's definitely a stay away game for me. I think in my own pick and pool, I'll probably lean Buffalo here. But I think Josh Allen will bounce back. Baltimore and Cincinnati plus 3.5 in some spots here. Last week was awful for Joe Burrow, and I'm concerned. I don't think he's 100% healthy. I definitely think we'll see some targets for T. Higgins and maybe some catches. I mean, it's not like he didn't get any targets last week. He had 8 of them. He just didn't catch any of them. Didn't see a whole lot of consistency or greatness in the offense last week in Baltimore. But Zay Flowers looked like a stud. 54 yards after the catch. He had 9 grabs, 78 receiving yards. Odell Beckham Jr. has the worst matchup possible, according to our wide receiver cornerback matchup tool against Cam Taylor-Britt. And he looked a little slow last week. I do expect to see Mark Andrews. I think he could have played last week. It was a winnable game against the Texans. They wanted to save him. Zay Flowers, looking for a catch prop, receiving yard prop, would dive into the receiving yard prop more than the catch prop because I think, again, he's a guy that will see a lot of one-on-one like Jordan Addison, and he's got like breakaway speed, and he's really nifty with the ball in his hand. So I'll be looking at a Zay Flowers prop, but I just can't find one at the moment. It doesn't seem to be out. I'm probably waiting on the status of Mark Andrews. But we'll see how that backfield plays out. If you had to start one, I would lean Gus Edwards. I don't want to start any of them. I said earlier in the week, I believe it's a trap. I think we'll see Justice Hill. And, Justice Hill wasn't efficient carrying the ball, but he did get a couple red zone looks and, there were rushing touchdowns. But on one of the 2-point conversions, it was Gus Edwards in there to punch it in. I think we'll see Melvin Gordon, get some touches as well. I think this is going to be a mess. If you need to start one and you're desperate, honestly, it's probably Gus Edwards. In a PPR setting, I would lean Justice Hill. I don't think Edwards will get much work. But in deeper formats, I think you guys should have Melvin Gordon. I picked him up in deep formats wherever I can. It could be a penny thing where he doesn't touch the field at all, really. But I think he's out of the 3. I think he has the highest ceiling to be a bell cow back there in Baltimore. Lamar Jackson, something to keep in mind, 10-1-1 against the spread as a regular season underdog. And I am on Baltimore at plus 3.5 here. Seattle and Detroit. As I mentioned earlier, I am worried about Seattle here at the moment. Missing their 2 tackles, both starting tackles, left tackle Charles Cross, right tackle Abram Lucas are both out of this game. Aiden Hutchinson, I think, will have a field day there. Look for him maybe to get a sack and a couple tackles. I think the over 3.5 on tackles and assists at -110, I do believe is in play here. I think Detroit will win this game. Keep in mind, Jared Goff, the home and away splits didn't look great last week, really. Did some okay things, but 23 touchdowns and 3 picks at home last year, 6 touchdowns and 4 picks on the road. By the way, he just needs 47 completions in a row to set an NFL record, 359 currently without an interception. It's the third longest streak there for Jared Goff. I know, believe it or not, he doesn't take any shots down the field. It's part of it, but hey, he's been pretty good over the past couple of years in terms of his accuracy, anyways, and not turning the ball over. I think this could be a JSN game because of what I talked about with the tackles and the left and right tackle out of this game. Got to get the ball out quick. Not really feeling Kenneth Walker, but you have him. I guess you play him. I definitely would like to play James Cook over him, but you probably need to play this guy. The touches should be there. Charbonnet didn't touch the field a whole lot, but Gino's going to have to get that ball out quick. I don't know if that's great news for some of the other wide receivers. I think JSN will. I think this will be his best game. He's pretty quiet in his first game. He's only played one game, but I think this could be a JSN game. Chargers and Titans. The Titans secondary dealing with some injuries here. We mentioned Hopkins may not play in this game either. The Chargers, 40 carries last week was kind of surprising. 234 yards. Kellen Moore, we talked about at the start of the season, maybe pushing the ball down the field with Kellen Moore as the offensive coordinator with the Chargers as well. The Titans are a team that you just can't really run on. I think like the run defense is good, but I also think teams just know the run defense is good and they can pick apart the secondary. Tennessee allowed a league high 275 passing yards per game last season. So I think Herbert, Mike Williams burned you last week. I think this is a Williams game. Keenan Allen, I think both of these guys could pop off. Doesn't sound like Austin Eckler is going to play with the high ankle sprain. So Joshua Kelly, don't love the matchup, but hard to ignore a guy that could get 15 plus touches and maybe a rushing touchdown for you as well. The Chargers are 3-point favorites. And also the Titans, is that secondary nicked up a little bit, right? Safety play, safeties and corners. There's a couple guys that are questionable there. And I think the outlier game last week for Derrick Henry wasn't on the field a whole lot. And Vrabel said that, but really excited to see Tajay Spears maybe get some more looks here as we continue to get deeper into the season. Chicago and Tampa Bay, 2.5-point favorites for the Bucks here at home. Baker was okay. He was, pretty rusty to start. They got some turnovers, defensively helped them out and won the football game. It was nice to see Mike Evans get a touchdown and him and Chris Godwin combined for double-digit catches and over 100 yards. So, it's just because Brady's gone. Everyone was pretty sour on Evans and Godwin. I think they're in pretty decent spots here this week as well. Rachaad White, I'm keeping my eye on him. He has not been efficient since he entered the NFL, but, he had a lot of touches. He only had 2 catches. I expected more usage, out of the backfield for him in terms of, targets. This is a good matchup for him. So if he has another 17, 18 carry game and only 40, 50 yards, we really need to be worried about him. Sean Tucker, a stash, a deep league pickup potentially could help you out later on down the road if this turns into a timeshare or something like that. But I am still believing in Rachaad White. At least I'm starting him this week. We'll see. We'll see how things go there for Mr. White. KC and Jacksonville here. We know that Chris Jones is back and he's going to play. Only 4 Super Bowl squads, so defending Super Bowl teams, have started 0-2. So I don't know if they're going to lose again this week, but I kind of feel like Jacksonville is going to push them to the limit. Travis Kelce, 2 games last year, 3 touchdowns. 2 games last year against the Jags, 3 touchdowns. And 20 grabs and just shy of 200 yards. So he ate them up. Of course, the playoff game there as well last season was a good game. I think it was a 27-20 final game there. But Jones back for the defense helps. And still worried about Christian Kirk not getting on the field in 2 wide receiver sets. Calvin Ridley we'll get into in a little bit. And, maybe we'll see a little bit more run from Bigsby in game number 2. The battle of the rookie quarterbacks here between the Texans and the Colts. We have CJ Stroud and Anthony Richardson. We'll get into Anthony Richardson. I like his rushing prop. I'll get into him in just a little bit. Nico Collins is getting some looks. Robert Woods. Let's see, in a game where They are favored and should be tighter than what was last week. What the usage of Dameon Pierce looks like. Is he really going to be a guy that's on the field 80% of the time, catching balls out of the backfield? I'm not interested in really any of the Colts running backs. Zach Moss sounds like he's going to come back. Deion Jackson had some carries, wasn't efficient, better matchup against the Texans, but I'm not interested in starting really anybody from this game besides Anthony Richardson, Pittman, and Nico Collins. I want to see if Dalton Schultz is going to get some more looks, but you can't start him after pretty much nothing last week. San Fran and LA. San Fran has won 8 straight matchups against the Rams. Shanahan is 9-4 against McVay. That includes playoffs. Stafford is 1-7 against the Niners in his career, 0-4 as a member of the Rams. He's got 5 touchdowns, 5 picks in those 4 games against the Rams. Puka Nacua is questionable all of a sudden with an oblique injury. No Cooper Kupp. You're not starting Cam Akers. I wouldn't start Kerwin Williams either. I think the Niners are going to blow them out, the 7.5. I don't think the Rams will do much here. Stafford looked okay last week, and he didn't throw any passing touchdowns. He looked better than okay, actually. But didn't have any passing touchdowns. Again, typically struggles against this team. Defense, there's no Puka Nacua, I think Tutu Atwell is a guy that maybe you have to play, but I don't know what the upside is for him. If you're missing Nacua and you're missing Kupp, Higbee, I guess, if you're in a pinch, but it's tough all around to start any Rams. I think this could be a Kittle game. Ayuk, you're starting. CMC was great last week. And you're starting Debo, but we're Team Ayuk over Debo on the show, and it's nothing against Debo. We just really like Brendan Ayuk. The Giants are 4-point favorites here against the Cardinals. Tough sledding for the Giants last week, right? It was really bad. I mean, both of these teams offensively didn't bring it. Neither of them had offensive touchdowns. Jones was under pressure all game. The offensive line is just brutal. George brought this in here for us. That's what we said yesterday. There's the offensive line. There I am. But there's a look at the offensive line there in New York last week. Credit to the Cowboys, right? Jones, I think, is in for a bounce back game. I can't trust any of these wide receivers. We want to play one of them in DFS. I'd probably lean to Isaiah Hodgins. Darren Waller is questionable. I think he plays. I'm going to shy away from the receiving yard prop and catch prop, so he'll probably have 5 for like 60 or something like that. But it's I don't want to tell you guys to put your hard-earned bucks on Darren Waller if he's not going to be 100%, because we got burned last week by that. I don't really want to start any Cardinals. James Conner is going to get some touches and things like that, but not really interested. Saquon, I think, is a bounce back. And I guess if you have Waller, you want to play him. You just hope that he can have a full game there. Jets and Cowboys, 9-point favorites. Of course, there's been some live movement here. Jets O-line, Zach Wilson, I think they're in trouble here. Dallas had over 50%. Pressure percentage in week 1, which was number 1 in the NFL. And the offensive line, I have some concerns about that O-line with the Jets, right? You saw Rodgers go down. Zach Wilson's going to take some hits. This game could get ugly. The Jets defense is great. You have Garrett Wilson, you start him. Alan Lazard, I'm not really interested in even holding him. Breece Hall, there's reports he's still going to be limited. I would start Hall over Dalvin Cook. Tony Pollard, you're rolling out. You hope that this game, if you're a Cowboys, not even if you're a Cowboys fan, but if you're a CeeDee Lamb fan, or you have him, you hope it's a little competitive, so there's some targets and some catches for him. Brennan Cooks, don't know if I'd really hang on to Brennan Cooks. Ferguson got a lot of targets to do a whole lot with them. Dak, I think Dak is, where do we have him in our projections? I have him ranked as like quarterback 16. It's a little bit of the matchup and a little bit of how this game could get out of hand like last week, and there's not a lot of pass attempts. You could see, what we have in our projections here. And we go a little bit deeper. We have Dak at 16 at 7.2 points. Kirk Cousins there at 16.6 was able to overcome that tough matchup and have a really good game last night. But this is, super flex. It's a tough spot. I think I agree with like Watson over him, Geno over him, Purdy over Dak. I do agree with that. Tough to just drop Dak and play somebody else, and you want Dak again. When you just hope he has a couple touchdowns there for you. But Pollard wheels up for him. Washington and Denver. I mean, both of these teams offensively, I don't like either of them. The Broncos last year, they were the worst offensive team in football. 16 or fewer points in 12 of 18 games now. this is a team that's really just been favored at home, and they've just laid eggs. I mean, rewind the tape from last week when I said they were 1-6 against the spread as favorites since acquiring Russell Wilson. Now 1-7 against the spread as favorites. We were on last week the Raiders to cover and maybe a sneaky little upset, which we had. I think the same thing applies here. I know this is Sam Howell's third start, first on the road. I would try to sit Terry McLaurin if you had him up against Patrick Surtain. I think that this is just going to be, Washington trying to run the ball. I'm not interested in starting Antonio Gibson. I said be patient. There will be games where they're playing from behind where maybe it's a Gibson game. Brian Robinson Jr., I like. He's going to get some carries, but he's going to run into a really, strong defensive front. Jacob struggled last week running the rock. Javonte Williams, I would play. P. Ryan in a pinch. It sounds like Jerry Jeudy will be back. I suppose if you have him, you could roll him out there. Sutton, I'd look for other options. Dalton Schultz is hurt. We could see Adam Trotman get some more targets and some more snaps. I mean, he was decent, last week, but I'm not playing many guys from this game. I think it's going to be a low scoring game with, a lot of 3-and-outs probably. Miami and New England there. The Dolphins are 3.5-point favorites. We have Tua fresh off the offensive player of the week, and he is 4-0 against Bill Belichick. He hasn't had spectacular games against Bill, but he is 4-0, and there's something to be said about that. Tyreek Hill, of course, a lot of attention is going to be on Tyreek Hill. This could be a Jalen Waddle game. I would start Raheem Mostert. I would start Ramondre Stevenson, a few targets and catches. I would start Kendrick Bourne as like a flex guy there. And, Hunter Henry, I guess, Hunter Henry, over Kyle Pitts, over there, we may be there. What are we doing again? We do this again last year, just rolling out Kyle Pitts all the time and it burning us. So Hunter Henry, I wouldn't be shocked if he had a better game than Kyle Pitts again this week. Saints and Panthers, I really like the Saints here. They have some offensive line issues at the moment. Carr over 300 yards passing last week. Part of that was the Titans, a lot of explosive plays. This Titans team, the secondary, just give up explosive plays, as we mentioned. I have more concerns about Carolina. I know this is a home opener. Bryce Young had 2 completions over 10 yards. J.C. Horn is out. That's a big injury. So I don't know how they're really going to move the ball. I think defensively they may be able to slow down Carr and company a little bit. I think Jamal Williams will have a better game. Titans rush defense last week, so a better game for him. Chris Olave, you're starting with confidence. I would start Michael Thomas if I had him as my wide receiver 4, try to get him in there as a flex play. I don't know if I'm fully there starting Rashid Shaheed. He was a sleeper pickup for us, but I don't think we're starting him just yet because, you want to have him for some bye weeks. And if something does happen to Thomas or anybody else in the offense, maybe more looks for him. But I think that was more about the Titans secondary than it was, Derek Carr. But Carr's good enough. The defense is good enough to squeak this one out by 3. And I'm not starting anybody from Carolina besides Miles Sanders. Miles Sanders had the 6 targets and 4 grabs last week. The 6 targets is the most he's had in like 3 years. Offense running through him. Hayden Hurst in a pinch, I suppose. Offense kind of ran through him. Thielen, Mingo. I don't know about Chark, but I don't want to start really anybody on Carolina not named Miles, and I don't love the matchup. He's had good games against the Saints before in the past, but that was when he was with the Eagles. But volume is king in fantasy, and I'll just show you guys. I think we showed he was on this board here. Miles Sanders, roughly RB 17, a half point setting at 12.2. You got Connor in there, Cook, Dameon Pierce, Javonte Williams, Najee Harris, and Jamal Williams in there, Dave Montgomery, as we talked about just earlier, Aaron Jones in that range as well. So I think that's it. I think we covered it. Oh, yeah, Cleveland and Pittsburgh. Nick Chubb, good first game from Nick Chubb, over 100 yards. Offense still going to run through Nick Chubb. Cameron Hayward, IR, no Deontay Johnson. Cleveland's defense looked amazing in week 1. Garrett getting after the quarterback. I like the Brownies here to go into Pittsburgh and pick up a W. Let's see if Amari Cooper can have a better game here. I know everybody's panicking. I wrote an article over at ftnfantasy.com yesterday where it was just like a buy low, sell high trade article. And I talked about Amari Cooper. Donovan Peoples-Jones led in snaps. Elijah Moore led in snaps. Cooper left that game at moments. It was sloppy weather. He started slow last year. He had the best season really ever in terms of yards per route run. End zone targets, he was 3rd. Another 1,000-yard season, career high touchdowns and targets. I think he's a buy low candidate. I am concerned. I said it yesterday. There's reasons to be concerned, but it's just 1 week. It's just 1 week. So I think he's a buy low candidate. And if I had him, I would play him in this matchup is definitely like a wide receiver 3. He's like a top 30 wide receiver. Did we go 3 deep here? I don't think he would have made the top 24. He's right there at 22 at 10.7 fantasy points. Again, a half point setting. In case you missed yesterday's show, this is the projections that we have, and you're just starting all those guys. Those are the top 12 guys that you roll out every single week. This is what I had for like start and sits in case you missed yesterday. Daniel Jones, Anthony Richardson, bounce back game for DJ, like Richardson. Miles Sanders, right? People may be concerned about the matchup of volume. Rashad White, willing to give him one more chance in a much better matchup. If he gets 17 carries, I think he may even fall into the end zone as well. Jamal Williams, bounce back. Breece Hall, even with just he's not a fantastic start, but I put him on the board because I'd like him more than Dalvin Cook, and he was pretty efficient in that first game. But this is a tough spot, and he's still, according to reports, and Robert Saleh is going to be limited here. Don't worry about Higgins. You can play Higgins, Mike Williams. DJ Moore, I could see like you wanting to go another way for DJ Moore if you wanted to play somebody else. It is a tough spot against Tampa because he's going to have to deal with like Carlton Davis or Jamil Dean, and those are really tough spots for him. I would expect more targets. Like you got to have more targets. Let's see if I can get you some other names where I would start maybe other players over DJ Moore, like Mike Williams. I would lock it. Garrett Wilson's in the 20s for me, but I would. Hopkins is not going to play. Both Bucks wide receivers, Cooper for sure. I would go Pittman over him. I would go Pickens over him. Zay Flowers over DJ Moore. And that's kind of it. I'm not there on Terry or Sutton. Puka now with this injury in San Fran, I'd probably go DJ Moore there as well. Nico Collins, I would go DJ Moore over Nico Collins, but I do like Nico Collins. Much better matchup from there. Sam Laporta, Hunter Henry are 2 tight ends that you can play. And these are guys that are just a little bit sour on this week. And Dak and Russ, Cam Akers, Antonio Gibson, Deion Jackson, Drake London, Christian Kirk, Marquise Brown, Brennan Cooks. Again, we didn't know the injury when I put this together. Juju Smith-Schuster says his knee's 100%, but I'm not playing this guy. Dalton Schultz. And although Okonkwo, very risky, could be a DFS play for you guys this week. If there's no Hopkins, and it sounds like no Hopkins, and if the Chargers do push the pace and score some points, Tannehill may have to throw the football. You got to throw to somebody. I don't know. Like Treylon Burks and Okonkwo could be guys that you could roll out in deeper formats. Okay, there were some questions. Then I got some picks, some props, some touchdown calls, and then we're gonna get out of here. So let's dive over to the comments here and see if we got everything. So would we trade Garrett Wilson for Travis Etienne? So I just need a little bit of context. I don't mind answering these questions, but I just need context. So I need to see who's on your team. I really like, what other running backs do you have? What other wide receivers do you have? Like one for one in hindsight, like it seems okay. Like, if you need running back help, getting Travis Etienne is great. I think I'd rather hang on to Garrett Wilson. I understand the ceiling definitely isn't as high. I mean, I had this guy as the offensive player of the year over, I think, was it 7.5 receiving touchdowns? Thought he would lead the league in receiving touchdowns, but let's be honest about the drop off from Aaron Rodgers to Zach Wilson. I think he's quarterback proof. Last year he was good. The touchdowns weren't there, only had 4, but he had over 1,000 yards and he was 6th in targets with Wilson, with Mike White, with, I don't know who, Joe Flacco. Did the Jets do anything? Do they bring in somebody? There's some rumors about Case Keenum. Do they make a trade? Like, is Kyler in play? Probably not. Carson Wentz wouldn't be a big upgrade. If you need running back help, you could make that move. You could make that deal. Etienne's going to be fine, even though I'm a big Tank Bigsby guy, and I think he's going to get some goal line work this year. He got it in week 1, had a touchdown. This offense is so loaded. There's never any stacked boxes because of Ridley and some of the other weapons there, that Etienne only needs like 15 touches to be a borderline RB1. Like, he's that good of a player, breakaway speed. So I just need a little bit of more context there. If you're still hanging out, let me know what else you got in your squad, so we can see if that actually improves your team. Rashee Rice, good game. I don't know, man. Like, it's going to be really tough to project this KC offense outside of Travis Kelce. I think that out of all the guys like MVS and Sky Moore and Kadarius Toney, he was on the field less. Yeah, he had, touchdown and he had some nice plays. I think it's risky. I have some Rashee Rice. I'm not starting him. It's kind of like, let's see how this plays out. Is Kadarius Toney going to be healthy this season? Does Rashee Rice, really leapfrog all these other guys, and he's on the field more? I kind of just view him as like a 35% of the snaps type of guy. Some gadget plays inside the red zone, which is something that you want. Everybody drops Sky Moore and Kadarius Toney. Always Sky Moore over Kadarius Toney. I saw. I got Kadarius Toney in a couple spots. I'm not starting him this week. I think he's interesting at DFS. Same with Sky Moore, because we all saw them on primetime, not be great. And this is a high total game against Jacksonville. I wouldn't start him. I'd have him. I would just kind of wait this out. I don't think you can just go up off last week, right? Mr. Nice Guy, what up? Welcome in. Brazis 91 in the house. Yes, please. Only good advice on parlay wins. We'll try our best here on this show. Got paid Hawkinson props because of your suggestion against the Eagles. So I guess it's not all bad here. We did okay. We had the touchdown prop. We had the receiving reception too. Swift better be the starter now, at least 15, 20 touches a game. I agree. Like, he should be, right? He's having a game like that, and he's never been given full reins like that. Again, 33 carries was the most he's ever had. He had a full 10-minute overtime to get to there. Just as 16 carries in the second half. That's tremendous, because we just never seen him get used that way. See if he can hold up too. But good first game, and I think he should be used that way. Start one, Dotson, Lockett, or Nico. I would start Lockett there. I'm a big Nico fan, but I'm going for ceiling here with Lockett. I do like Dotson over Terry McLaurin because of Patrick Surtain, and I believe he'll be on Terry McLaurin. But I think that the Seattle and Detroit game, we could see some offense. I am worried about the offensive line for sure in Seattle. I think Detroit will cover and win that football game. Place will be rocking in Detroit. But I would lean with Lockett there. I think you have to. I think you kind of hate yourself if you didn't, right? Because he does have the highest ceiling of the bunch. Could Kane get a pop too? I think so. Some decent usage there for sure. Hunter Henry. Yeah, I don't know. I said last week on the Sirius show, somebody asked Pat Freiermuth versus Hunter Henry, and I said Hunter Henry. He finished his tight end 1. The reason I said Hunter Henry was more so about the Eagles and their issues in the middle of the field. I think they're going to struggle all year long with tight ends. And who's there catching passes? You know what I mean? Like, it's Bourne, who I like. Ramondre's second in targets, not a big Juju guy. You're just really hoping for a touchdown if you're really streaming or playing a tight end. If you don't have the studs, that's it. Yeah, Higbee should see more targets, should see more catches. It is a very tough spot, but if there's no Nakua and there's we know that there's no Cooper Kupp, Tutu Atwell, I believe that's going to be like an outlier game for him. So Higbee should get some volumes, and what more could you ask for at the tight end position? JSN can be our Addison. I think we will see a JSN game in the slot. Typically, Detroit has struggled against slot guys, and you would think with the offensive line and the pressure that Geno would get the ball out a little bit quicker, and that would benefit JSN. But Brandon Branches looks like a really nice player, so I don't know how much we can look into last year. Yes, Puka dealing with something. Jets are going to bring back Joe Flacco. Oh my goodness. All right, here's a question. Miller penalty box. Love the name. Would you start Joshua Kelly over Breece Hall? Absolutely. That's something that I would do for sure. And I may not say yes in a couple weeks if we had that kind of question, but no, Eckler. It is a tough matchup against the Titans. He may only have 15 for 45, but he may have a touchdown. And I think that there's a better chance of him having a touchdown. Now, don't get me wrong. I think Breece Hall is a much better player, but still not up to full speed. Dalvin Cook, 9-point dogs in Dallas against that defense. They are going to be in the face of Zach Wilson all game long. It's going to be a tough spot for him. Deesh, I feel for you, buddy. I think I did you wrong last night. I was having nightmares about telling you and other people that Swift was a risky start last night. Oh my goodness. Cook or Gibbs? I got Gibbs higher. If you're worried about the timeshare, between Montgomery, then you can roll with James there. I got Gibbs. I think that there's a buy low window as well. I mentioned that yesterday. I know that I've said multiple times that I think this will be a timeshare between the two, and Montgomery with the carries and some red zone looks, but it's really hard to ignore how good Gibbs looked with the ball in his hands and how explosive he looked as well. And I think Seattle's in trouble. So I would lean with Gibbs there. Half PPR. DJ Moore, Dotson, or Kelly if Eckler is out. I'll watch back to this. Talk Swift. Oh, he played Swift. Don't even listen to me then. Just do your own thing. You know what you're doing here. You don't need to listen to me. Played Swift. Don't worry about it. Yeah, I talked about some of the trades I saw from Andy Barons. Yeah, there was some pretty crazy trades. Like somebody got Travis Kelce for Swift straight up, and Jalen Waddle, for Swift straight up as well. It's like, oh my goodness. But here I would go with I would play Kelly, man. I'll play Kelly in this spot. Eckler high ankle sprain. Again, I don't sound like a broken record here. It's a really tough to run on that defense, but maybe he can fall in the end zone for you, like a rushing touchdown. Herbert should be able to air it out against this Titans team. They had the most passing yards last year per game. They got some injuries, starting safety potentially out in this game. And Derek Carr just had 300 yards. And there's explosive plays all over the place in that game from Derek Carr and the offense. So I don't know. Like, the highest ceiling there is DJ Moore, but my goodness, two targets, and they came with a couple of minutes left in the first half. So I would just take the running back that's going to touch the ball, 15 times. That's where I'm at. Dalvin Cook. I'll play Gibbs over Dalvin Cook. Drew Livingstone in the house. James Conner and Jamal Williams. I think I'd go James Conner. I think I would go James Conner. But I think the ceiling belongs to Jamal Williams. Well, listen, if you think that the Giants' alternate spread at 9.5 is a lot, good sir, then you may just get a bunch of catches from James Conner. I think he had 5 catches last week, but he only had 8 yards. He wasn't efficient. I think Jamal Williams is probably in for a better game, Drew, and you know that, right? You know that, the Titans defense and up against Carolina, he could fall into a touchdown or two, but I think that there will be more catches for James Conner, and there probably will be more touches for Mr. Conner as well. Man, give me good players, Drew. Draft better, buddy. I'm kidding. Rishna, my guy in the house. Miles Sanders, good against the Saints this week. You can be okay. There's a couple things I like about Miles Sanders from week 1. He had 24 opportunities. That's carries plus targets. That was second behind CMC. The matchup is really tough. The Saints have typically been a good run defense for years, but Sanders did have a couple games. If you look at the career game log against the Saints, I don't want to look into that too much, but the Saints had like 48 or 49 games in a row where they hadn't allowed a 100-yard rusher, and Miles did it. But of course, he was the part of an offensive line and an Eagles team that ran the ball really well. But one thing I like about Miles Sanders, what I saw from him last week, and we did see some Chuba Hubbard, was that he had 6 targets and 4 grabs. He had 50 catches as a rookie. 50 catches. He wasn't used in the receiving game over the past couple of years. Like, the 6 targets is the most he's had in 3 years. And I think he's only had 6 targets in a game like 2 or 3 times. So I don't think he's a fantastic play, but volume is really hard to ignore. And we do have, if you're just joining the show, we do have projections here. Maybe this will help out Drew as well, because we know he needs it. So Kenneth Walker's a touch high here, in my opinion, with the 2 offensive tackles out of the game, and he's not going to catch a lot of passes. I'd like to see Charbonnet out there run some routes. Let's see if he can get some touches this week. We dig a little bit deeper, and then we get into James Conner here at 12. This is a half-point setting. Jamal Williams there at the bottom there, Drew, 11.1. I mean, splitting hairs, right? Obviously. I think personally, as I mentioned, I would go James Conner. I do think that there's a higher ceiling there with Jamal Williams. And then we have Miles Sanders on the board there, Rishna at 12.2. And I'll give you the consensus ranking at ftnfantasy.com. Promo code Meaney. Save yourself a little bit of cash if you want those rankings. We'll show you what Jeff Ratcliffe has to tell you guys, because he is the GOAT ranker. Of course, he was the number 1 ranker in the game not too long ago. He does have Connor at 18. He's got Jamal Williams at 22, and he has Miles Sanders at 20. Guys after Miles Sanders: Najee Harris, Jamal Williams, Aaron Jones, Javonte Williams, Raheem Mostert, Breece Hall, Isaiah Pacheco, A.J. Dillon, and Brian Robinson, Tyler Algier, DeAndre Swift. into the 30s. So maybe not a good look. All of us ranking DeAndre Swift that low, but I think we can all agree that was a surprise performance there. And I think he will move up Aaron Jones in his projections and his rankings when we find out that this guy is ready to go this week. I think he's fine. Yeah, I think he's playing. Didn't he practice? Maybe. I mean, last I saw is Aaron Jones was good to go. So maybe he's not good to go, but it's something that you keep an eye on. Of course, there was a question earlier about Aaron Jones, and your decision will be made a lot easier if there's no Aaron Jones and if he's not going to play. So maybe that's why Ratcliffe does have him down. Those were projections from yesterday, and I noticed that his rankings are usually on par with his projections. So I think him moving Aaron Jones to 23, maybe he's a little bit concerned, but he still only has AJ Dillon at 28. Aaron Jones, out of his mouth, he said that he could have played last week too. So we'll just keep an eye on that situation. Kelly, the question for the iTunes listeners was Moss, Joshua Kelly, or Kerwin Williams. So I would just go Kelly, right? I would go Kelly there in that spot because it does sound like Eckler is going to be out, and I don't think you want to get involved with the Colts backfield, even though it's a good matchup. And I don't think you want to play too many Rams against San Fran. Okay, the Jones is less than 50-50. Daily Handle, breaking the news here. So there we go. With the question earlier about Aaron Jones, just go the other way. What was the question? You guys still hanging out here? Let me scoot up and see if I can get that question. Aaron Jones. All right. Or James Cook. There it was right here. Just play James Cook. If he's less than 50-50, it's definitely concerning. So play James Cook. Bills are favored by 9 points. You'd be ready to rock. Didn't practice today. Appreciate you. All right. So things are changing here. That's not a good sign. If you don't practice on Friday, it's not a good sign. I still don't feel great about AJ Dillon. I'll be into his rushing attempt prop. He'll probably, touch the ball 17, 18 times. That's just going to be a game where both teams are running. It's going to be over quick. It's going to be ugly. Definitely like the under in there as well. So we'll adjust with Aaron Jones, have a backup plan. I don't know if I'm that confident in RB1. Here is where, I could adjust on the fly where I would put in. I play Gibbs over AJ. Dillon, I'd play Cook. I'd play White. I play Dameon Pierce. I play Miles Sanders. I play Jamal Williams. I play Javonte Williams. I play Raheem Mostert. And then that's kind of where he falls in. So it's like low 20s. He's going to get all the touches. But he just does not look great running the rock, doesn't? I agree. Deesh. It just looks like he's running in quicksand. It just didn't look good. He had a goal line carry last week, which he didn't convert it, and then they brought in AJ after Aaron Jones after that. So, but you can't ignore volume. It's the same thing we said about Kelly. You can't ignore volume. RB2, top 22, top 20 running back, roughly. I don't know if I would play him over Kenneth Walker, but I could see him having a better game than Kenneth Walker. Yeah. Eckler's not going to play. That's why we're in here as a show on Joshua Kelly, even though it is a tough spot. I would go with Lockett there. I don't think Hopkins is going to play either, but I would go with Lockett. I think the ceiling is higher. Man, Tannehill looked awful. I think there's maybe an opportunity for Treylon Burks and Chico Conco to get some looks and some targets, but I don't know if we can trust these guys. So I'll go Tyler Lockett. He's off the injury report. Yeah, there's a lot of starters. There are injuries. You're right, Bruce. A lot of injuries. Okay, so I think I got to most starters. Take questions. If you guys have any more, we can get after it. I want to talk about some picks and some props here before we get going. So let's toss up some props, get some touchdown props and things as well. But this is what I'm thinking as of now. There's a lot of guys I want to, I've been trying to search in our prop shop to get in, like Zay Flowers, where is he? But there's so many guys that are questionable at the moment, and I think that's why. But if you're subbed over at ftnbets.com, then you'll have all the picks and you'll get notified right away. We'll have a discussion Discord channel, all picks, all tools, all projections included in that package. So Calvin Ridley, 67.5. He couldn't have asked for a better debut. Racked up 11 targets, 8 grabs, 101, scored a touchdown. Same concerns we had about Christian Kirk all offseason carried into week one, not getting on the field in 2 wide receiver sets. You want to play him in DFS by all means. I don't think you can really play Kirk with confidence in season long or get involved with any of his props. So just not getting on the field in those 2 wide receiver sets. Have a high game total here. It's not the best matchup. Snead is a really good corner, but we have him projected for 74.6 receiving yards. So taking the over on Ridley at 68.5. And on the fly here, I do see a 67.5 over at FanDuel. Stephon Diggs at 74.5 receiving yards. Diggs excelled in a really tough spot last week against the Jets. 13 targets, 10 grabs, 102 yards, had the touchdown. So we're jumping on this number against a weak secondary in the Raiders. Up against Marcus Peters. Marcus Peters, a lot of people are like, oh, he's a great corner. I don't know. Like, he jumps routes. Sometimes he has picks, but according to our wide receiver cornerback matchup tool, this is the 6th best grade for a wide receiver this week for Stephon Diggs. And we have him projected for 88 receiving yards over at ftnfantasy.com. Nick Chubb, over 12.5 receiving yards. We're going to go to this all year. It worked for us in week one. We talked about Chubb flirting with 2,000 total yards. Just over 2 catches per game in his last 9 games as a rookie, on pace for 50 grabs as a sophomore before the team brought in Kareem Hunt at the halfway point. This is still an offense that runs through Nick Chubb. Watson did some good things. He ran the ball. He ran one in. Chubb had 4 catches for 20 some odd yards. So over 12.5 receiving yards. And I think the rushing and receiving yard prop is a little low as well, as is his rushing yard prop at around 75. 91.5 rushing and receiving. We have him for 89 rushing yards and over 100 total yards rushing and receiving. So I like this one. Last week, 4 targets, 4 catches, 21 yards. His last 2 games with Deshaun Watson, 9 grabs, 10 targets, and over 60 receiving yards and a receiving touchdown in there as well. Anthony Richardson over 38.5 rushing yards. Most books have at 43. This is from BetMGM. We have him for 49 rushing yards. He finished with 40 rushing yards last week on 10 carries. There were some design runs. Only 3 design runs for him in the preseason. One in the final preseason game against the Eagles, which he ran for 16 yards. I know Zach Moss is coming back, but the Texans haven't been able to stop the run for years. D'Amico Ryans is going to improve this defense, but they just don't really have the personnel, and they struggled last year on outside zone runs. Anthony Richardson at over 38.5 rushing yards. I would take anything over 43.5, but I think this number will climb to mid 40s and maybe we stay clear of it. But if you can get the 38.5, I would jump on that one. And CMC, this is really low. I'm surprised. 65.5 rushing yards for Christian McCaffrey. Guys, he had 152 last week on 22 carries in a much tougher spot against the Steelers. Reports that he would be, kind of limited, even though he's not dealing with an injury. We'd see some Elijah Mitchell in there. We just didn't see any Elijah Mitchell. He had 5 carries in that game. Elijah did. Stafford, 1-7 in his career against the 49ers, 0-4 as a member of the Rams, 5 picks, 5 touchdowns, no touchdowns last week, depleted offensively. Offensive line doesn't look good. And in those 4 games, he's been outscored, the Rams, that is, by 60 points. So we have the Niners here as touchdown favorites. I think they roll in this game. We have CMC for 78 rushing yards, so 65.5 is something that I'm jumping all over. Again, I'll have more over at ftnbets.com. Again, that's really over 68.5 receiving yards. Diggs over 74.5 receiving yards. Chubb over 12.5 receiving yards. Also over 91.5 rushing and receiving. I do like the over 75.5 rushing, but just want to give 3 Chubb props. So I think he can catch a couple passes. So we went with the 91. I mean, he can have 100 on the ground again, and nobody should be shocked. Anthony Richardson over 38.5 rushing yards. Christian McCaffrey over 65.5 rushing yards. Touchdown props here for you guys. Some that are kind of chalky, but guys that I think are going to find the end zone. Tony Pollard at plus 100 could be the same thing, right? Just minimal carries. Defense is so good, puts them in situations to succeed. Pollard struggled as a goal line back last year, 3 for 9. He had a couple goal line touchdowns in week 1, plus 100 to get a touchdown. Again, best number you will find. Use the prop shop, ftnbets.com, link inside the description of this video. It's all free, save you a lot of time, save you a lot of cash. Stephon Diggs is like a minus favorite really everywhere. FanDuel hanging plus 114 for him to find the end zone. Jamar Chase, also think a sneaky touchdown call may be Gabe Davis in that game. I also think James Cook finds the end zone. Bills are going to roll. I don't know how the bounce back game. Jamar Chase, plus 107 for a touchdown. Chase, second in the NFL in touchdowns since he entered the league. I think Burrow I don't think he's 100%. There's something to be said about that, but I think he will hook up with Jamar Chase at plus 107. Also, T. Higgins is juiced to have 5 catches. He'll be involved. He'll get some catches. He's not going to put up a donut again. Calvin Ridley, our guy, plus 175. That number's over at Bet365. Most books are hanging plus 130, plus 135. High scoring game. And yes, positives that it sounds like Travis Kelce and Jones is going to play. But Jacksonville can push the pace, man. They can score some points. I really liked what I saw from Calvin Ridley there at plus 175. Bijan Robinson at plus 225. You hope that he gets some more red zone rushing attempts, and it's not all Tyler Algier, but I just couldn't ignore that number. And I know both teams want to run the football. So at plus 125, like Arthur Smith is not going to throw the football. That's it. Like Drake London, Jair Alexander all over him. This is it. He doesn't care. He says it's fantasy football, but when you take London and Pitts in the first round, you'd think you'd use the guys, but Bijan Robinson at plus 225. This one's a little bit risky at Darren Waller at plus 230, but I think he is going to find the end zone. And I would sell high on Darren Waller, man. I'm worried about the hammy. You hope that he plays. Definitely some risk there, guys, in that one. We got burned last week with Waller over 4.5 catches. Just didn't play in the second half all that much. Michael Thomas at plus 244 red zone targets for Michael Thomas in week 1. Chris Olave is great. High ADOT, air yards. Again, he was one of 4 guys to be top 10. Actually, was the only guy who had 60 targets last year inside the top 10 in ADOT and air yards. Used similarly in week 1, down the field, kind of a deep threat guy. He's a little tiny. I think he's a good wide receiver, but red zone targets for Derek Carr. Look, Michael Thomas, Juwan Johnson, maybe Jamal Williams punches one in there for Drew Livingstone, but Michael Thomas at plus 240. I really liked seeing him get 4 red zone targets from Derek Carr in their first game together. And then these guys in green are juice, but I do believe they'll find the end zone. Chubb, Saquon, and CMC at plus 498 for a rushing touchdown. And that is from Bet365. Drew's got to play for us here. He's pretty sharp as well. Isaiah Hodgins over 30.5 receiving yards. He says free money. I don't know about that, but I do think that the Giants overall will bounce back. But man, I don't think the 9.5 is a lock, Drew. I think that this Giants offensive line is brutal. And I think that the game will be I think the Giants will cover that 4, but I think it'll be within a touchdown. We'll see. Waller, please. You must have him. Here's where I'm at for some picks against the spread and some parlays, having some fun here. The Saints 3-point favorites on the road. I did mention, the concerns I have with the offensive line, and Tannehill had some turnovers last week, and maybe that's why the Saints escaped. But Bryce Young, right? Bryce Young, he's going to be a decent quarterback in the league, but only 2 completions over 10 yards. JC Horn is out. That is a big loss. And I do like this Saints defense. I think it'll be low scoring. There could be some struggles. Derek Carr does typically struggle outside of domes, but I like the Saints to cover this game. Baltimore plus 3.5 and Washington at plus 3.5. I have Jacksonville here as the dog at plus 158, but I think Baltimore and Washington probably have a better chance to go in on the road and win a football game. Because we know about Joe Burrow at the moment, typically a slow starter, but injuries have been an issue for him to start. Maybe that's why he's been a slow starter. Baltimore wasn't really in sync offensively, but a divisional game, I think Cincinnati wins it, but I believe Baltimore will cover this at plus 3.5. And Jackson Lamar, Lamar is 10-1-1 against the spread as a regular season underdog. And I do believe we'll see Mark Andrews play in this game as well. Odell Beckham Jr. wouldn't play him. Zay Flowers play him with confidence. Man, that guy looks awesome. Washington at plus 3.5. Just, this is Sam Howell's first game on the road. Really tough place to play, Mile High. He only has 3 starts. But this Broncos team just does not impress me. Dead last offensively. Offense worst in the NFL in points per game. Lost at home against the Raiders. Russell didn't look that good. I get it. Jerry's back. We'll see Javonte Williams, maybe more run and more touches for him as well. But as I said earlier, 16 or fewer points in 12 of their last 18 games. And as a favorite, said it last week, 1-6 against the spread as a favorite. Russ, now 1-7. So Washington at plus 3.5. Tampa to win on the money line. I also have them in the bet tracker at plus 100 to win by a field goal here. I think the Bears will be better offensively. Maybe they just got to run the football and not have Justin Fields throw so much. Please throw to DJ Moore. But the Bucs have some players on defense, and I said this at the start of the season. Don't be surprised if this Bucs team is 500 or hanging around in what is a top NFC conference, maybe to make the playoffs. They still have guys like Carlton Davis, Jamil Dean, like Devin White. They still have guys on this field defensively and offensively, and Mike Evans and Chris Godwin who could help out quarterbacks. I want to see if they can get some success with Dave Canales as the offensive coordinator, been with Seattle for years with a strong run game, to figure this out with Rachaad White. If this is another dud game from Rachaad White, we had the over 11.5 rushing attempts last week, a 2-unit play. I need to see what that prop is. It would take anything over 14.5. I think he's going to have another 17 or 18 carries. But if he struggles again, because last year he wasn't efficient, he was among the basement dwellers in terms of yards after contact. Not efficient at all. Have Sean Tucker on your radar. Pick him up. Stash him. Could turn into a 50-50 thing here. Cleveland, just Pittsburgh, what we talked about. Cameron Hayward, IR. They struggled to stop CMC last week. Now they got to deal with Chubb. No Deontay Johnson. Like this Cleveland team, defensively, they looked real good last week. Real good. Deshaun Watson, shook off a little bit of rust. I think Cleveland goes into Pittsburgh. It'll be a tough game. I have to sweat this one out, but I think they win on the money line. This is my upset, Jacksonville. And my goodness, if the Chiefs start 0-2, it will be complete panic mode, but they're good enough. We can give them the benefit of the doubt. But as I said, only 4 Super Bowl squads, defending Super Bowl champs, that is, this is from ESPN Stats and Info, have started 0-2. But Kelsey is back. Chris Jones looks like he's going to be back here as well. It'll be a tough game for Jacksonville to pull out. I'm a sucker for the Jags. And Doug Peterson, man, 5-0 outright as a home dog. Woo. Peterson from the Eagles days, dog pound. Oh, in Jacksonville, man. I think T-Law is going to be in the MVP conversation. He's going to have to take care of football, though. Seattle at Detroit, over 47. Seattle should get to 20. I think they could. Detroit should get to 30. Talked about the home and away splits for Jared Goff. 23 touchdowns, 3 picks at home last year. 6 touchdowns and 4 picks on the road. The 2 offensive tackles down for Seattle, left and right tackle. We got Charles Cross and Abraham Lucas out, and Aiden Hutchinson's going to have a day. But I do think that Seattle can get to 20. And we'll get to that over there. Seattle does typically play to some unders. But don't worry. Let's get to the over. KC and Jacksonville over 51.5. Somebody's going to score 30 there. One of the two is going to score 30, if not both. The same thing we talked about last week with Miami and LA. I think it's going to be a very similar game. KC's defense did impress me last week. Offense out of sync without Travis Kelce. 51.5 taking the over. Under 39.5 here with Washington and Denver. I don't know. Maybe we can get 1 offensive touchdown. I don't know. May not get too many. Parlay here, San Fran, Dallas, the Giants, the Saints, plus 302. We got a little teaser here. Buffalo to win by 2, Dallas to win by 3, San Fran 2.5, Giants at plus 2, plus 225. So I do believe that is it. If there are any more questions. I did have some DFS notes. I did have some DFS notes here for the people. Man, StreamYard's been really choppy lately. So I'll just rapid fire through some of these picks that I had. And I believe I went over a lot of my analysis for everybody already. But quarterbacks I would spend up on. We got Josh Allen at 7.9. I think a bounce back spot here against the Raiders. We have Justin Herbert at 7K. Mentioned the Titans, most passing yards allowed last week. Depleted secondary at the moment. Brock Purdy's 5.7. I think that's just too low for Brock Purdy. And Purdy's 7-0 in the regular season, 2 passing touchdowns in every single game. He should be a $6,000 quarterback. Baker Mayfield there at 5-1 against the Bears. That's probably as cheap as I would go. Running backs that I would spend up on, Saquon Barkley here at 8K, Tony Pollard at 7.5. Derrick Henry, I'm a little bit... the reason for Derrick Henry is I think he's going to come under-owned, and I think last week was a bit of an outlier in terms of his snap counts, and he could catch a couple passes there. And the Chargers, I'm not really sold on their run defense. We'll see if it's better this year. Josh Jacobs at 7.1, I think he's going to catch some passes to the backfield. Bills allowed, what did I have here? 172 rushing yards last week. The Bills allowed. Drew Livingston still in the house. Are you worried about that rush defense? Rachaad White is in here as a GPP play only tournament. I wouldn't play him in cash. Joshua Kelly at 5K. He's probably going to be pretty chalky, but volume is king. Tough matchup. But an opportunity for him to maybe fall into nearly 20 opportunities, which is, at 5K, it's going to return value. And at 6.1K for James Cook, I think he is an interesting play as well. I do believe that the Bills will get to roughly 30 points, and I think everybody may eat. Stephon Diggs spending up, Calvin Ridley, Mike Williams at 5.7, GPP only because this guy does have issues staying on the field. Mike Williams, that is. Mike Evans, DJ Moore, GPP only because it's a little bit risky. Zay Flowers at 5K, Nico Collins at 4.8. Kadarius Toney, everybody saw it firsthand. He can't catch. Everybody's dropped him. It was a clear fade for us, but DFS is different. If you're going to play in tournaments with thousands of people, you want to be a little bit different. Sky Moore and Kadarius Toney will be a little bit different for you. Like, they won't be owned because, like I said, everybody saw them at prime time. They saw them struggle, but at the same time, Kadarius Toney got open the entire game. Sky Moore played more snaps than anybody. Patrick Mahomes had 2 brutal throws to him, so it could be sneaky DFS plays. And Josh Reynolds, by the way, is not 7.8. I think he is 3.8. So that one is a mistype by me, but I think I think Detroit will put up some points. Over at the tight end position here, Evan Ingram at 4.8, Tyler Higbee at 4.6. I got Sam Laporta at 3.9, Luke Musgrave if these Green Bay players aren't playing, Aaron Jones not catching balls out of the backfield, Christian Watson not playing, Romeo Doubs not practicing but playing, maybe not being 100%. It's going to be a run game. It'll be the quickest game probably on Sunday. And then we have Zach Ertz is just like an ugly play, but he had double-digit targets. So, you just can't gloss over that. And then Cowboys at 4K, the spend-up defense. They're going to be the spend-up defense all year long, but if you can find a way to get them in your lineup, that's great. And 3K here for the Lions against Seattle and a depleted offensive line. The Jets at 2.7 is the sneaky play, and then the Cardinals at 2.6, both sneaky plays there as well. And we did say Tyler Lockett daily handle in there as well. All right. Man, we've gone long again, but you guys are always hanging out and you're asking questions, and hopefully we don't steer you wrong. I'm going to have to update my rankings, and we'll get the projections updated as well when we hear the official word on Aaron Jones, but it does sound like Aaron Jones will be indeed sidelined. Bruzees, appreciate you. You guys have a fantastic weekend. Let the winners be yours. Enjoy the football. We'll be back on Monday to break it all down. Have a good one. Cheers.